Okay, so today I'm going to show you the process of what we call completing the square. Okay, please note that you're still going to end up with the answers of where this crosses the x-axis. So this process also is the same as the quadratic formula, which is the same as factoring, which is the same as plugging it into your calculator and finding where it crosses on the graph. This is just another way to do it, and your final way to do it. Okay, I do have to teach you this process though, because one of the release questions, you actually have to know part of this process to answer it. Okay. So, you know. Okay. So, how do we complete the square? Completing the square means we're adding the square of half of the coefficient of the term bx. Okay. So, we're going to just work on completing the square first. So, flip open your example number 1. We're at 1A. Okay. So, algebraically, to complete your square, you take your B term, which is 12. You then cut that in half, which gives me what? 6. And then you square that, which is 36. So this is a complete square when I have x squared plus 12x plus 36.
Will it always be plus C?
Your C is what you would need to find to complete the square.
Where did you get the 2 from? Wait.
That's part of your formula. In order to complete the square, it says half your B. That was up in the top part. It says half your B and then square it. Okay, so let me show you where this came from. So I've got x squared. Okay. If I cut my x's in half, that means I have 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 across this side and 6 across this side. Okay. If I want to fill this in to complete the square, I would need 36 little dots to make this into a square. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. My job is to figure out how many little dots I need to make this an actual square. So that's what you did algebraically.
Wow. That's crazy. That's it?
Oh, no.
Oh.
This is just the first step of it.
Dang it.
Come on now.
Y'all thought.
Yeah, y'all thought. Okay. Oh, they want us to write the expression as the square. Dang it. Okay, so once you have it as a perfect square trinomial, this now breaks into x plus 6 squared. So if you were actually to factor this, so let's think about this, okay? Hold on. If we were actually to go through and factor this, x squared goes here, correct?
Right.
36 goes here, okay? So normally we now do a t-chart, and I need numbers that multiply to give me 36x squared that are going to add together to give me 12. 6 and 6. Okay, so you plug in 6x and 6x. Let me switch. Okay, so when I pull out here, I pull out an x and a 6. When I pull out here, I pull out an x and a 6. So this is technically x plus 6 times x plus 6, which is x plus 6 squared.
Whoa.
Cool dude.
Okay, so the way I always look at it, when I half b, that's a 6. Well, guess what? That's what goes here.
What?
When you half your b value,
Oh.
that becomes part of your binomial. Okay, so when I halved b here, this number,
It'll always be a part of your.
yep, this number and this number should always match.
So if it's not, you got it wrong.
Okay. If this is positive, this has to be positive. If it's negative, that would be negative. Every time.
It'll always be.
Always. Always.
Will the answer always be set up like that, or that's not the answer?
We're not even finished yet. Again, this is still the first part of the process. I've not actually gone through and shown you how to solve it yet. You just need to get through the process of completing the square first, and then we'll go through and solve.
So it'll always be parentheses x plus something.
Not necessarily. It could be x minus. It depends on what my b value is. Because my b value is positive here, that's what makes it the plus. If that was minus 12x, it would be a negative. Okay?
Did you have parentheses and, I mean, not have, but like, you have to square it and then you just do that, or you have to do that factor. Or you know what I'm saying?
You need this answer to solve. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Okay. All right. Let's try this process one more time. Okay. Mathematically, it says I need to cut my b value in half. So negative 6 cut in half. Negative 3. When you square that, your answer is positive 9. It's negative times a negative. So, as a trinomial, this looks like x squared minus 6x plus 9. As a binomial squared, this is x. Because this is negative, it's minus. And this 3, you're 3 squared. Okay, so it's when you half your b value, not squared. Okay,
So,
just when you half it.
So if your b is negative, then your answer is or
Okay, so if you notice, this is negative 3, which makes this minus 3. Okay, this one was positive 6, which makes this plus 6.
huh?
Okay.
Oh,
You good?
yeah.
Did you catch it?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying at first, but
You're fine. Okay. All right. That's the first part.
the first part.
The first
Wait a
part.
minute, no.
Okay, example number 2, not only are we going to do that, now we're actually going to solve.
You said just the same thing?
Yes,
You said exercise the last thing you did?
That could just definitely.
yes, it'll do the same thing as if you would graph it, find your x-intercept, if you would factor it, or if you would use the quadratic formula. This does the same exact thing. Okay, so notice, now I've added an equal sign and a number. Okay, in order to complete the square, I only want my x squared term and my x on the left. Okay, so this one's already good. So again, we need to half b. So negative 14 cut in half is what? Negative 7. Okay, when I square that, 49.
So you wouldn't make this equal to 0?
No,
So C equals
you want the c over to that side to do this.
So C would never play a plus with.
No. It will when we go to solve it, like we're going to do something with it, but you want it away when you complete the square. Okay, so this means that my left-hand side is x minus 7 squared. Everybody good with that?
Yep, sure. Yeah, okay. All right. Why are we only doing the left side?
We're not. We're
Oh.
getting there.
My bad.
Okay, so everybody's good with the left side though. What we did in example 1A and 1B, that's all we've done so far. Jackie, you're killing me. Okay, the next step of the process is, now I've got this 15. Okay, this answer that I got when I squared has to go with that 15.
Why
Okay,
does the 49 go over there?
so we have manipulated the left side of this equation by sticking this -7 over here. And what we do to one side, we have to do to the other.
Okay. Yeah, so why are we
Okay.
doing it differently for the first part again?
It's not that we're doing it differently, we're going beyond the first step.
So if you have
Examples
It's just more
1A
to
and
the
1B was
equation.
just the first step. How do I get that number? There was no equal sign in the first part. We were just trying to figure out, if I gave you just this, how would I handle that? Now that I've put an equal sign here and something that it's equal to, we actually now need to solve it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we put 49 there, right?
Do I have anybody else lost at this point?
so if you have to do
Oh, literally.
I think you need to show
A little.
But I don't think there's a way you can help me. I think I'm just like, oh.
so yeah, I'm really confused though. So you said if you have to do so once I do it up,
Mhm.
so all of you do 15 divided by 2 and square that also.
He must have-
because you just got 15.
Wait, why wouldn't you do 15 and then the
Oh,
x minus
Jesus.
7 part?
So is the formula the same in the quadratic? I feel like if you write out the formula for it.
There is no formula for this.
It's not very school.
It's just steps. There's no actual formula where you're plugging stuff in.
I think it was that way.
So,
You cute.
hold on. Let me maybe go back to this.
Yes, that will help.
Okay. So, when I squared it, technically when I put it here before I factor, I was adding 36, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, remember, what you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. So before I actually factored this side of the equation, I was adding 49, which is why you add 49 to this side.
Huh?
Okay, hold on. So we have,
Well, hold on, Miss Smith.
I'm trying not to.
No, you should.
Okay, so let me start this whole process over again. So we've got -14, you cut it in half, you got -7. Okay, you squared that and you got 49. So what you technically do is I do x squared minus 14x plus 49 equals 15 plus 49. What I do to this side, I have to do to this side.
You guys see that?
Right, I'm gonna-
Then you would take that extra step and factor it into x minus 7 squared. So this whole thing factored becomes this, which is why you add 49 to that right-hand side. Because you've done it here, we just moved it into factored form instead of writing this.
Everybody good?
All you did was divide it.
You still lost?
I get it, but why?
I don't.
Because
I feel like this is how math
a
works.
whole nother thing. It's not the quadratic formula.
But why are we putting 49? Yeah,
Because
okay.
you don't know your C. That's why.
But is our C not 15?
But look up there, you don't start with it.
15's on the end. She said you want your C. Oh, my second one. I get the first one.
Because that's just the first step.
But I get, okay,
Oh,
I get
God.
it. I'm on the second.
So example 1 would be like if I didn't have this here.
Yeah, but now we got to see. So why are we? What?
Oh,
She's
so-
trying to show you.
We're
the
not
step.
finished
We're not
yet.
finished.
We're not finished yet.
So what are we doing in this part? We're not looking for the C. What are we doing?
We're actually going to find where your graph crosses the x-axis.
That's what we're doing.
I'm gonna throw things at you.
I mean, I know that's what
You can throw this.
That's-
You know what?
Yeah, you know,
Let me
keep
give you
going.
these two new
She was
That's
acting
not
like
going
going
last.
She's over here going la 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 la.
Stupid though. Just keep going.
I'm
It's okay.
still confused.
Now you
Where
got
did
it
you
though.
come
I'm gonna ask you after class, cause just keep going.
Yeah, just go. I get it.
Don't give up. That's gonna make me
Cause she's
cry.
recording and I don't wanna like hold her thing.
Honey,
think I'm
you're
laughing.
fine.
Cause my
That's why I
thing is,
stopped laughing.
we put, what is it, X minus 7. And it's supposed to be squared.
I would really sit here and cry. You think I'm lying?
But why would we,
You can't just cut off the phone.
like, I get that you're doing the X squared, that's negative 7
I
squared.
mean, it just clicked.
But like,
Jack, you got it.
the way you wrote it up there, like, that's confusing.
Yeah, like I'm
Because
confused. I
you
don't
gotta
know
keep
exactly
doing it
about
to
what.
the
Like
end.
what? Like
Like,
if you would have told me to ask you a direct question, I couldn't.
so we're basically just like writing that and then putting
That is
the
confusing.
squared, right?
What?
Like,
How long is it walk?
we writing, so we basically writing the whole, the original problem.
You'll have none.
But when you do that, you're finding the perfect square or whatever, and then you're adding that to both sides, right?
Teron, you're confusing me.
It's confusing me.
Okay.
Even more than already.
I'm trying to do it. Let her finish.
I'm trying to figure out because I get what you're saying, but I don't get what you're saying, and I'm trying to figure.
Jesus. Miss Smith, I think you should finish
And
or at least go on to the next step.
yeah, maybe it'll click later on.
Maybe, right.
And if not, then we'll just talk to you after
Okay.
class.
Because I don't really think that they know what we're doing,
Okay.
like what we're trying to solve.
Okay. You might be right. Okay.
Maybe
Let's get through this example and maybe the next one, and maybe it'll click and you can figure out a way to word your question, and I can figure out a way to
Answer.
swap it from there. Okay. So now that I've done this, I now can solve. Okay. What do I get when I add 15 and 49?
You get 64.
64. So x minus 7 squared equals 64. Okay. I need to get x by itself. So I need to get rid of this square. What is the opposite of squaring something?
Square root.
So we take the square root of this side and the square root of this side. Because again, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So we have x minus 7 equals, what's the square root of 64?
8.
Okay. It's going to be plus or minus 8. Because remember, I can square positive 8. If I square positive 8, I get 64. I can also square negative 8 and still get 64. Okay, so this is where your two answers come from, just like you had those two answers with your quadratic formula. Okay, so now you have two separate answers to split this into. So x minus 7 equals positive 8 and x minus 7 equals negative 8. Just like your quadratic formula split into two answers. This also splits into two answers. So now I can add 7 to this side, and you get 15. And I can add 7 to this side, and I get negative 1. So this means your graph crosses at negative 1 and positive 15.
Whoa. Wait. That was like.
You not lost?
Hold up a second.
You still lost?
Not on this part.
Oh.
I can do this. I'm stuck on it. Still.
Oh, what?
Part
Okay.
I'm stuck on.
So
The 15%.
if I would have done this as the quadratic formula, okay, I would have had to set this equal to 0. Oops. 15x minus 15 equals 0.
Wait. Oh, look. Yes. It says plus 1. Do you mean plus 7?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
What?
Yeah, that's what I was like.
Huh? That's why I didn't look at it. See, now I'm lost.
I wrote 1 instead of 7.
Wait, what is this? Where did this come from?
This is a quadratic question.
If I would,
This not this.
no.
Okay.
If I would go to solve this using the quadratic formula, you'd have to move the 15 to the left-hand side. So then you get A is 1, B is negative 14, C is negative 15. Okay, we good so far?
Yeah.
Okay, we do your discriminant. Negative 14 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 15. Can you do that in your head?
No.
No, that's why they came up with this method.
Wait. So I don't have to do this. I can do this. Oh, then Miss Floyd, you ain't gotta explain no more. I'm good.
It all does the same thing.
That's what you said about the quadratic formula before we learned it. And now you want to do that.
Wait.
So you might not. you
Let's
might
finish
not.
this. Somebody plug this in and give me an answer. That's plus 60, I don't know.
It's 256.
256. 256. Okay, so then we've got the opposite of B plus or minus the square root of 256 divided by 2 times 1. What's the square root of 56?
16.
So we've got 14 plus 16 divided by 2 and 14 minus 16 divided by 2. This becomes 30 divided by 2 is 15.
And then negative 1.
Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1.
Look at that.
That is so much.
That
Okay,
is
I don't
crazy.
even want this in my notebook no more. Like, I don't even care. I'd
Okay,
be so happy.
while I understand that, there are questions where you need to know the process of this on your final.
I got a question.
Why though?
You just ruined my whole day. How did you know?
So like they could give you a question on the final that says, if I give you this equation,
Oh, because for
what
this,
would I need to complete the square?
right, you need to see.
What do I do?
I get that.
So you would have to know that you have to half this and square it to put it here.
Oh, okay. I have a question. So when you change that to the quadratic, why'd you put negative 15? How did you know?
Because you have to set it equal to 0 every time you do the quadratic
You
formula.
had to move the 15 to this side of the equation.
I know that, but how did you know negative not plus?
Which
Because
means
it's positive
already
on the right
positive.
when you go across the equal sign and
already
change the
positive.
sign.
Remember, what's the one side you gotta take it over? No, you go.
Anytime you cross something across that equal sign, you have to change signs.
I did not know that. You did it on the test. You got 100. I don't know that, so.
Miss Smith, I have a question.
Yes.
So from that, so the x minus 6x plus c, if you have that on a test, after you get c, can you do it from the quadratic formula then?
No.
Why not?
Because you're changing the equation when you put 9 here. It's no longer your original equation once you've completed the square.
Will they ever have any questions like asking about the process for step 2 or step 3?
Let me see if I can find the question that's released so you can see what I'm talking about.
I really hope they don't because like that's a lot of work.
So what steps from the quadratic formula are the same as the steps?
They're not.
They're all different.
Yeah.
I want to leg like this. Right. I don't sit with my legs in I don't either. Because it's just, I don't know. My legs get tired of sitting in one place. I just need to sprawl around a little bit.
So,
I'm not stressed.
no, wait. Before you do that,
I'm gonna work that.
listen, before you do that.
I don't even
you have to work. Right.
Yo, I just scored.
You love that.
You said you don't work with these?
I do work with them.
Yeah, I work. Well, she used to go like this.
With your legs is too
She used to go like this. She used to go.
With your legs, you won't go down.
I mean, it looks good. As long as the answers are right when you plug stuff into the calculator, I don't have the answers right, so I can't tell you if it's exactly right. Okay. This is a completing the square question on your release test.
Oh, what's that on? Wait, paper.
See, I would not know what to do if I looked at this. Yes, I would. Cause I see that.
Wait, hold up. I'm confused. Is the value of what the fork?
You're touching my toes, Jackie.
Okay, Miss Smith, can you show us how to do this?
No, we're not getting into that right this second.
My mom has me.
That's
so-
way too much for what we're doing right now.
Oh, shit.
But this is the type of stuff that you're going to see. So no, I'm not showing you completing the square just to confuse the heck out of you. They are going to use it against you. Okay. You have to know all the methods. While you may not use them all the time, you have to at least have seen them and know how to use them.
Oh, but I feel like, I mean, it's my mom, but I'm just gonna tell her later on.
She's throwing you out.
No, I didn't answer because I'm sick of her. She's stressing me out right now. I just don't get it.
All right.
Hey, yo, who got lost? I got you lost.
Okay. Example 2B. Okay. Same steps. This time we're going to deal with some decimals. Okay. So I need to subtract. I'm sorry. -5 is your B. We need to cut it in half. -2.5. I need to then square that.
You get 6.25.
6.25. No, it should be positive. Huh? Because you didn't put your -2.5 in parentheses, therefore it didn't square your negative. It only squared your 2.5. Remember, anytime you square a negative number, negative times a negative is a positive. Okay, keep that in mind. So, technically what I'm doing is that answer that I got, I add it to both sides of the equation. Because again, what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Okay. Okay. So we have to add that to both sides. Well, what that does is that makes the left side of your equation a perfect trinomial, which means I can rewrite this left side to be x minus 2.5 squared. Okay. If you would actually factor that, it would become x minus 2.5 squared. Because you'd get x minus 2.5 times x minus 2.5.
So the easy way to do simple or whatever is just to take that. Because
Okay. Again, this and this will always match. Okay. So now on the right side, we have to do 1 plus 6.25, which becomes 5.25.
-1 or just 1?
It's negative.
I mean, you're still going to get 5.
Okay.
will you
Everybody okay?
will you have to do when you like go to x equals 7.35 or where they want x this?
We're
not done yet. You don't know what x is. We have to solve for x.
X would equal whatever it equals to that number.
What?
Right. Hold up. Wait.
I get
So the X would be like.
You're saying like what's in parentheses will always match whatever you put B in hell.
Uh-huh. Every time. You're tired of school. Okay. So now that we have it set up, we need to actually solve it. You said to get rid of this square, we have to take the square root. That leaves me x minus 2.5 2.29, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. So plus or minus 2.29. Whoops. 2.29, if I could write correctly.
Yeah, I messed up. Cause then don't we gotta put the 2.29.
So now it breaks into the two separate answers. We've got x minus 2.5 equals positive 2.29. And you have x minus 2.25 or 2.5 equals negative 2.29.
What?
You add 2.5 to both sides, and you get x equals 4.79. And you add 2.5 here, and you get x equals, it's going to be positive 31? 21? Sorry. My bad.
So that's your two answers.
That's your two answers. This one and this one. Bobo.
Wake up.
We're going on.
I'm just going to tell you right now, whatever you sleep through, I will not help you with later. You can suffer. You waste my class time, I don't help. I'm not nice. Okay. So the last ones, they want us to complete the square, but this time my equation set equal to 0. So before I can actually complete the square, I need to move that C value to the right. If you were doing quadratic formula, this is perfect. If you were factoring, this is perfect. Completing the square, I don't want that negative 21. I want it gone, so I need to move it. So when I move it, because it's going across the equal sign, it becomes positive. So you get x squared minus 4x equals 21.
Why do you want it on the other side? Because of this, like, one.
In order to complete the square, you do not want your C value. Okay, it has to be moved. So now it's the same process. Cut your B value in half. So negative 2. Square it. 4. So technically what you're doing is you're adding 4 to the left-hand side and you're adding 4 to the right-hand side. Because again, what you do to one side, you must do to the other.
Oh, look. So, whatever is on this side, would that still be like ABC or no?
Huh?
You don't have
Yeah.
an ABC.
If you were to do quadratic formula, it would be just like it.
But you can't do quadratic formula once you do this process.
No, but she's saying like with that equation.
Yes. Okay. So now we need to factor that left-hand side. It's a perfect square binomial, which means we have x, and this is a negative 2, so this is minus 2 squared. And on the right-hand side, I have 25.
Well, how do you know when to add in the answer? Like in the last one, we added 6.25, and this one we didn't add.
But I did. 21 plus 4 is 25.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm talking about to the left.
I don't see.
Where'd you
Where'd you get the 2 from? Remember, it's the same.
But that's positive.
What
That's negative.
At the
So then
top,
you know it's
right there.
So then
What's
you
in the
would square it,
parentheses
and then
when
you would
you?
do.
Yeah, but that's negative.
That's negative too.
Right. This is negative, and so is this.
Oh, it is negative.
It's still the same.
It's going to right here. It's going to right here. Yeah.
Well, I guess we don't mess
And then
with that
once-
side.
You don't mess with this side until it's factored. So, I mean, I still got 4 here. And put it on both sides. Okay, so now we square root both sides. X minus 2 equals plus or minus 5. Okay, that's the biggest thing. A lot of people forget the plus and minus.
Yeah,
Okay. So please be careful with that. So then you end up with x minus 2 equals positive 5 and x minus 2 equals negative 5. We add 2. So we get 7. We add 2. So we get negative 3.
It is 2:45.
Okay, one more on this one. Okay, again, when it's in standard form, I need to move that c to the other side, which means my c value is going to become negative 5. Okay, I now need to half my b, so negative 4, square it, 16. So technically I need to add 16 to both sides. Once I do that, I factor that left-hand side. So it becomes x, because this is negative 4, it's minus 4 squared equals 11.
We don't square.
Yeah, we're going to have to. I'd probably, it says to the nearest hundredth.
So are we squaring the 11?
You're not squaring anything, taking the square root.
I mean, yes.
Yes. So we must square root both sides. So you get x minus 4 equals plus or minus
3.316. So 3.32.
3.32. Because remember that 6 rounds your 1 to a 2. And it says nearest hundredth, so I need 2 places after the decimal. So now my 2 answers. X minus 4 equals positive 3.32. And x minus 4 equals negative 3.32. We add 4. So you get 7.32. And we add 4 here. And you get 0.68.
Let me check.
Yeah.
Yeah. You good? Okay, this is going to glue in on page 96. And then pull out your last one.
Is mine up there?
Your notebook?
No, my paper. Oh, it's in my book bag.
Is it steps?
Yeah, it's numbering the steps that it lists at the top. Okay. So, to help you out, on this page, I have listed every step that we have done. Okay? So, here are all your steps to reference on completing the square. I don't know why this 0 went down here. This 0 should have been up here. Yes. Okay. That 0 should have been up there. Let me blow this up here. You ready? All right. So this is just like the one you did in that last example, example 3A and 3B. So it says at the top, step 1 says, subtract C from both sides. I guess I shouldn't really use the word C or subtract. Okay. I need to move that C value to the right. So it becomes positive. So x squared plus 10x equals 24. Okay, step number 2, because we're going to get into where A is no longer 1. Okay, it's not going to happen for these first 2 examples, but the bottom 2, A is no longer 1. So step 2 we can ignore right now because A is 1. So we're going to skip step 2 because A equals 1. Okay, step 3 says find half of B. So we take 10 and we cut it in half. 5.
Skip step 2.
Yeah.
Yes, because your A value is 1. Okay, so we half your B. Then we square it. So 5 squared is 25. Add that to both sides of your equation. So technically you have x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals 24 plus 25. Okay, again, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. You've got to keep your equation balanced. Okay, your left-hand side needs to be factored. Because it's a perfect square trinomial, it's x plus 5 squared equals 49. Okay. Step 7 says take the square root of both sides. So we take the square root and the square root. X plus 5 equals plus or minus 7. And your last step, solve for x. So you have x plus 5 equals positive 7 and x plus 5 equals negative 7. Subtract 5 from both sides. So x is 2. Subtract 5 from both sides. X is negative 12. Is it getting a little easier now that we've done a couple of these? Yeah. It kind of turns into like riding a bicycle.
Kind of a little bit.
Kind of a little bit.
I used to follow my bike a lot.
Did you see the little bicycle that's a pizza cutter? They've got a little, it looks like a bicycle and the wheels are pizza cutters.
Oh my god.
I see it.
I want to see it. I
You
need
so
it.
extra.
I need it. They
All right.
got good beds.
You ever seen a bed
At Walmart?
that like you lay down in and just go to sleep?
Okay, first step.
I was thinking, wait a minute.
First step, throw that C value to the other side. So negative 17 becomes positive.
I see.
Okay. Is my A value 1? Yes. So step number 2 can be skipped.
It's negative 17?
Positive 17 now. When I move it to the
yeah,
other
yeah,
side. Okay. Okay. We need to half my B value. So half of 16 is 8. We then need to square 8. 64. We add 64 to both sides. So x squared plus 16x plus 64 equals 17 plus 64. Okay, now we factor that left-hand side.
X plus 8.
X plus 8 squared equals 81. Wait, hold on. Somebody said hold up. You good? Okay.
So we take that 17 from number 1.
Yeah. The 17, you have to keep it. Because if you don't, you change the equation. Okay. So you square root both sides. X plus 8 equals plus or minus 9. And you get x plus 8 equals positive 9. X plus 8 equals negative 9. Subtract 8 from both sides. X is 1. And negative 17. So these last two examples we're about to do, your A value is no longer 1. Blown. Okay, so there's only one extra step that you need to add in. The problem is, when I add in this extra step, sometimes you don't end up with very pretty things. AKA, you end up with fractions.
I hate fractions.
Sorry.
Can we say this for tomorrow?
You would just do fractions.
Can we say just a practice on our own? For our test?
You want to save these ones for tomorrow.
Practice it at home?
Yeah, let's do that. I'm kind of tired.
Okay. Okay. All right. So this means I want you all to get out your computers. Okay. You're going to go to IXL. And we're doing J.7 and J.8.
Are the A's going to be equal to 1?
I'm hoping. We're going to go look at it real fast.
Do we glue this in on 97?
Yes. Yes, glue that in on 97 so you don't lose it. Yes. T. Smith 31415 at...
Because we're tired. Because we're tired.
Molly, what's your number while I'm over here?
I already have one. Okay.
I don't remember what my username is.
You can sign into mine.